Hoi anō, pūtau aki mauna, Ngāti awa nai te rani, Ngāti maniapoto tū haurani, nau mai rā. Nau mai rā e tio, nau mai ki tēnei pai kōrero aku panuku, nei te reo rāhiri, e rere atu nei ki a koe. No mātou tonu te waimaria, kua tau mai koe i tēnei rangi, hei waha kōrero mo tēnei kaupapa, he kaupapa whai mana, nā whai tonu kia whai a tēnei kaupapa kōrero i tā Charles i te ata nei. No reira, kātahi nei te kaupapa whakamiharo ana. No reira, kai te tūnane, ka kore roa aku kōrero hoi anō, kai a koe te wā, tēnā rau atu koe.
Tēnā koutou e hoa mā, ho hepa harawira tōku ingoa, i te taha o tōku matua, ko maua te maunga, ko tauranga te moana, ko ngai te rangi te iwi. Ai e, i te taha o tōku whaia, mama, ko ka, mother, ko pūtau aki te maunga, ko whakatane te awa, ko Ngāti awa te iwi. Ai e. E honore he kororia he maunga rongo ki runga ki te mato te whenua, he whakaaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. Arohaina ngā teina me ngā tuakana e noho nei, i runga te whakaaro kotahi, pai marire. At the place where the winds blow from the seas into the sands, into the harakeke. There lives a naughty patu paiare, a naughty fairy, and this naughty fairy's name is Turi Turi. And the wise ones would swirl around Turi Turi's head, and the wise ones would say, Turi Turi, Turi Turi, you naughty fairy. Tangaroa, the father of all of the things under the sea. He don't like you, boy? Turi Turi goes, heh, go away. I'm a magical fairy. Don't you come and tell me what to do. Go away. And with that, the wise ones say, Turi Turi, kia tu pato, kia tu pato. With that, the wise ones swirl around Turi Turi's head. Flow through the flax bush, through the sand and back out to sea. Kei ngā mana, kei ngā reo whakarongo mai nei. Ki tēnei o ngā kōrero, nāku, neira ka mihi. Neira ka mihi ka whakawātea mai i wā koutou nā e mohi o neina e poke ana koutou i te mahi. Auna ko whakawātea e koutou ki te haere mai ki te whakarongo ki tēnei o ngā kōrero nāku. No reira koia ko tēnei mihi kaua ki kia koutou. Whānau. I'd like to take you on a little bit of a journey about, well, this session's about me, going to be about me. Because what I'd like to do is to give a little bit of context about the experiences that have made me whom I am as a Māori in this universe. And so, whānau, I was born and bred in Whakatane. In the year of our Lord, 1956, a few years back, to be exact, 64 years and 7 months ago. I was born in Whakatane. And if we have a look at our kaupapa here, ka tō te rā, ka rere te rā, I reflect on the day that I was born, the sun rising on the first day and the sun setting, the sun rising on the second day of my life on this planet and setting. And each one of those days over the 64 years has shaped me to be the person whom I am today. And that is born of the experiences that I have been brought up in, have shaped the person I am today. So what I'd like to do is to give you a little bit of insight into those experiences, the myriad of experiences that have taken me on this journey into a storyteller, being a storyteller. So I was born in Whakatane. I did all my primary schooling in Whakatane. Did 1 year at Whakatane High School. And then I was sort of sent away from Whakatane. One day, my dad came home and he said, "Boy, I'm going to send you to St. Stephen's." And I'm not going to St. Stephen's. I'm going to stay here with all of my mates. "Why do you want to send me to St. Stephen's?" And my dad said, "Well, the principal of the high school, Peter McClay, his name was, he said that I need to be moved out of the community because he said that the influences and the experiences around me at home, at primary school and my first year at secondary school would not, he said, realize my true potential." So we have a principal, Peter McClay, who had been observing me through my years at school, who saw potential within me, but I was a little bit of a mischief, going to the shop and stealing packets of biscuits to impress my mates, and all of that sort of stuff. Getting in with the wrong crowds, pinching fijos off trees on the way home, that sort of thing. And my dad came home and he said, "Mr. McClay has got a scholarship for you to go to St. Stephen's because he believes that you have more potential than what you are displaying." And so I was sent to St. Stephen's, spent 5 years at St. Stephen's. And so in a sense, when I was born, the Aramaitera, when I left Whakatane to go to another school, that part of my life, ka tōtera. And then when I got to St. Stephen's, ka ara anō te he rā anō, and those myriads of experiences. And then at St. Stephen's, I spent 5 years at St. Stephen's, and it was a school for Māori boys based on a foundation of culture and experiences. There was lots of drama, theatre, kapahaka, sport, of course, as part of the learning experiences. I was later to realize that those experiences at St. Stephen's, in terms of the theatre and the drama and the kapahaka, actually put me into a type of a leadership role within the school that I actually didn't realize until later on in life. And then I finished at St. Stephen's, ka tō te rā, that part of my life, and I went straight to Hamilton Teachers College, ka ara mai anō he rā, and I was at Teachers College from 1975 to 1977. Learnt the skills to be a teacher. In my first year out out of Teachers College was at a school called Melville Primary School with a head teacher called Hedda Johns. And it was at that school that I got into using storytelling as a teaching tool with our tamariki, the majority of them Māori in my class in that first year. Ka tō he rā at that school, and then I went to Huntley West. And it was while at Huntley West, in my first year teaching at Huntley West, that I was telling a story in the classroom, and there was this inspector in the school to inspect another teacher. And there's these long classrooms, these long corridors down the sides of the classrooms, big glass windows looking into the classrooms. And this particular morning, I was telling a story to my tamariki. Unbeknownst to me, this inspector was watching in the window. At morning tea, she comes and taps me on the shoulder and she says, "I'd like you to come and run a storytelling workshop for teachers." "Oh, I'm not a storyteller." She said, "You're a storyteller. I was watching you through the glass window, and you had those children captivated with her words. You're a storyteller. I want you to come and, do a workshop on storytelling." I had to go home and I just really have a little bit of a think about what it was that I was doing in the storytelling, because it was just something that I did. A Māori, natural born storytellers. People are cultures, and the people of the cultures, and we've got natural born storytellers with them. Everybody's got a story to tell, and we have to tell them. And so I had to go home and I had to sit down and have a little bit of a think about what I was doing. And came down to voice expression, facial features, working at different levels, action, and that sort of thing. And I found subsequently that our Māori tamariki are very visual. I'm not saying that reading isn't important, it's just as important, but they're two actually different genres. In the storytelling, you're able to make eye contact with your audience, with your tamariki. You're able to draw them into the story. You're able to, audience participation, make them part of the story. You can do that with reading as well, but I found with reading is that when I was doing the reading, you'd hold the book up, you'd look at the words, you read the words, did you look at the tamariki, and then you turn the page. It becomes a little bit of a disconnect, in terms of that participation. So I found that our tamariki were very visual, and they like that the monster voices and all of that stuff. Subsequently, I went and did this workshop with the teachers, and then I sort of made a bit of a name for myself. I ended up getting tono to go and do book weeks and library open days and launching of this and that, and eventually got onto a circuit with well-known authors like Wati Himara, Alan Duff, Tessa Duda, Margaret Mahi, and we did tours, and they read their books, but I was the only oral storyteller. It led me to have national engagements, and then led me to have international engagements. And so for the last 37 years, I've traveled the world as a storyteller, telling our stories to the different iwi-take-take, the different cultures and countries throughout the world. And I came to the conclusion that if you, I've gone off track here, but I came to the conclusion that storytelling is a powerful teaching tool, which is not used in our classroom practices every day. And it's something that I think needs to be brought back to help our children to ignite the potential. I'll give you a little bit of an example of the power of story. And I was over in Germany, Frankfurt Book Fair actually. It was with Alan Duff and Tessa and the likes, 2012. And it's the biggest book fair in the world, held every year, and New Zealand happened to be hosting it in 2012. About 6 weeks before I got over there, I got an email from a school in Germany to say, "Mr. Harawira, we understand you are a storyteller. You are Māori from New Zealand. Would you please come and tell stories about your culture of New Zealand to my school? My school is a school for behavioral kids. Would you please, could you please come and tell stories?" So I emailed back straight away, said, yes, I'd love to come and tell stories. Subsequently, I got over there, got to the school on this particular day. I walked into the principal's room, and principal met me and said, oh, Joe, you don't have to do this, you know. I said, oh, what? You don't have to tell stories. And so, oh, why not? Oh, these children are going to be climbing the walls within 5 minutes of you starting. I said, oh, no, it's okay. It's all good. And so he took me down to the room. I walked into the room, and there were these 18, 19, 8 or 9-year-old children sitting in a semicircle, 4 teachers, in between them. And the teacher who was in charge came over, explained what he wanted to do. He said, I would like me to explain who I was, where I'm from, in English, and he would translate into German for the children. So I launched into introducing myself in about 3 or 4 minutes into my introduction. This little boy in the corner, about 9 years of age, I suppose, started talking over the top of me. I looked at the teacher looks at me, and the teacher says, oh, that young boy, he's translating what you're saying in English into German for his mates around him. And I looked at the teacher and said, oh, I wonder if that young boy wants to come up and translate this story for me. And teacher, no, he's going to be climbing the walls in a couple of minutes. I said, no, you try it. Call him up, see if he'd like to translate the story from English into German for his mates. And so the teacher called this young boy up, and I could see the young boy shaking his head like this. And the teacher looked at me and said, oh, he said he'd translate it. And so the story I just told you at the beginning, at the police, with the wise winds blow from the sea, this young 9-year-old boy, he was right there with all the facials and all the voices, but he was doing it in German for the benefit of all of his mates. Well, by the end of that story, it's about a 15, 20-minute story, the teachers, they were just shaking their heads. A couple of them had tears in their eyes, just shaking their heads. And all of his mates were going, wow. About 2 months, 3 months after I got back from Germany, I got an email to say that they'd introduced storytelling into their curriculum. And at the end of the year, I got an email to say that they'd moved that boy out into a mainstream school. And so this is where I'm leading to in terms of my role as a teacher. I was 24 years in education, 14 years as a classroom teacher, primary school. I was 24 years in education. My role as a teacher was to, and I believe this is the role of all teachers, is to ignite the potential within the child. Every child is born with potential. And I felt that my role as a teacher, I feel that my role as a teacher is to ignite that potential within the child, to ignite that creativity within the child, to be able to use their skills to support community and humanity. And so it's the reason why I am big on storytelling and the power that is within storytelling. See, everyone's a storyteller, that's the truth. I think Henry Hyde know that because it's around about the 1970s or 1980s, showing my age there. But everyone is a storyteller. Everyone has a story to tell, whether they be fairy tales, whether they be traditional stories, etc., etc. You see, when I was at St. Stephen's and I had to learn English to pass School C, in Xanadu did Kublai Khan of stately pleasure dome decree, where else the sacred river ran through, measureless to man, down to a sunless sea. I had to learn that to pass a test. I failed miserably. Why? I'm not blaming in Xanadu did Kublai Khan for failing, but that whole poem I had no idea of that the paradigm or the experiences of that particular culture, I suppose. First of all, who was Kublai Khan? Where was Xanadu? It would have been better if they said, you need to learn this to pass School C. On the 5th day of Christmas, Hone Heke chopped down the flagpole for his tino rangatiratanga and his mana motu hake. Because those are the experiences that I am a part of within my culture, within the Māori culture. Those were the stories that I heard about and I learned about. But there was nothing to connect me with that Western framework of learning and having to pass tests, learning things that I had no connection with. I've digressed there. So I suppose the journey of storytelling it continues. And part of that journey, my life's experiences, was the taking of tēnei, te tā moko. Tā moko is about history, it's about genealogy, it's about story, it's about skills, my skills, it's about destiny, my purpose in life whilst alive on this earth. And when I started on this journey around taking this, what I call a birthright, the perceptions around tā moko weren't all that well. Well, people didn't understand what tā moko was about. They immediately went to the story or the narrative around it being solely gang related. And so it took me 5 years of pillow talk with my wife to arrive at being able to get this, because I wouldn't have had it done unless Sharon, Himehaya knows my wife, Sharon, had agreed. But it was 5 years of just whispering in her ear under pillow, dear. It wasn't that I wanted it, it was that I was just talking about tā moko. And eventually the people around me within the community, I suppose, were the ones that said, you're ready for this. And then the journey with my wife started in terms of that pillow talk. After 5 years, she said, okay, you deserve it for all the things that you've done, that I've seen you do for your whānau, for your community, for Aotearoa, kei te pai. And so I began that journey, and my tā moko has 10 different parts to it. Each part says something about me. I believe in destiny, and I'm not talking about the Destiny Church here. I'm talking about destiny. I found some, I looked up the word destiny to see, I looked up the thesaurus to find out what that word destiny meant. And find them at the moment, but one of the things was around calling. It's your calling in life. And so if you look at the design and the center of my forehead here, those who could read tā moko would look at it and immediately say, he's a storyteller. It might be a different design for those who hold whakapapa, for those who hold the historical kōrero, for those who are hold the the kai, green fingers collection and kai moana and that sort of thing, and the skills of fishing and or the skills of warfare, within warfare, different design. If you looked at my chin, the design on my chin here, Those who understood this would look at it and say, oh, he's involved in healing Mother Earth, which is part of my journey in conservation, healing Mother Earth and looking after taonga and the like. And so that's part of the storytelling. And I just want to relate to you another story about the power of this mark, tā moko. My wife and I were in New York, and we were sitting on the tube. We'd been over there for about 8 days. We were sitting on the tube. I was over there talking about doing storytelling and talking about tā moko. We were sitting on the tube on our way into central New York, and somewhere along the line the tube stopped, and this black African American man got on and he sat straight opposite me. The tube carried on. I didn't know he was there, and somewhere down the line he got off. And then I carried on to the radio interview with Tiokas and Ghost Horse. 45 minutes of question answer while I was there. Questions about tā moko. And at the end of that interview, Tiokasin said, by the way, whānau, if you're listening out there to this kōrero and you have any questions you would like to ask, Joe will be appearing at the Blue Stockings Book Club at such and such a time, 6 o'clock that evening, Tuesday evening. If you want to come along, and if you have any more questions, other questions, please come along. So Tiokas and Julie took us there. We arrived there at 6 o'clock, walked into this room, and there were probably 60 people sitting in there. And I had a documentary done on my tā moko, the before, the during, and the after, about 45 minutes. So I introduced myself, showed my documentary, and then the questions started from the audience. Did it hurt? Who can get it done? What's the process? How old do you have to be? Questions like that. And I answered the questions over 45 minutes. And then Tiokasin said, he's going to call the hui to a close, the meeting to a close, because Sharon and I hadn't had dinner and he was going to shout us dinner. This black African American man was sitting right up the front, and he puts his hand up and says, excuse me, Mr. Ghost Horse, can I say something to this young gentleman? I was young back then, 2012. And Tiokasin said, yep, kei te pai, yes, go ahead. He didn't say kei te pai, he said, go ahead. And this black African American man said, well, young man, you may not have noticed, but I got on the tube and I sat opposite you this morning. It's a wonder you didn't notice me because I was just shaking. He reckons he showed me he was going. He said, it's a wonder you didn't notice me. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. No, I didn't. And he had to get off the tube. And he was in his car going to somewhere, and he was listening to the interview, my interview with Tiokasin, and heard I was going to be at the Blue Stockings Book Club that night. And he said, well, young man, it's a wonder you didn't notice me because I was shaking. I was wanting to reach across, shake your hand, introduce myself, and ask you if you would come and talk to my black African American congregation about that. And he just went like that. Because, young man, it spoke to me. I want my black African American congregation, I want them to see it. I want them to feel it. I want them to know it. I want them to understand its spiritual power, its spiritual power. And I basically said, yeah, I'd love to come and talk to your black African American, your congregation. Knowing that we'd already been there 8 or 9 days and we were flying out the Saturday, that his service was on the Sunday, I said, but we're flying out Saturday because we'd already been there a few days. He said, that's all right, young man, here's my card. Anytime you're back in New York, you come and stay with me. I will look after you, but I would like my congregation to feel its power, its spiritual power. It had such a grip on me that I couldn't reach across the aisle to shake your hand and to ask you if you would come and do that. Walking down the street in Russia, this young wahine lady just cuts me off, comes in and stands straight in front of me, looks at my tāmoko, looks to the side, both sides, and she gets her hands and she goes like this, acknowledges and carries on. It's in Russia, one of the towns in Russia. And I've had reactions like that with this experience. And so I use the tāmoko as an advocacy tool, as an education tool. I came to the realization, whilst I was in Germany actually, that my purpose, my destiny in life, whilst alive on this earth, is actually right there on the center of my forehead. People who would see that would say, who understand it would say, a storyteller. I've come to the conclusion after these many years and seeing the power of story that my destiny, my purpose in life, right up until I take my last breath is to heal the world with story. This is how I used it in my class, to heal in different ways. Not necessarily because people were sick, but to heal their ngākau, to nurture, to nourish the ngākau, to look for the children to understand their potential within themselves as a unique being on this planet. And so the journey in tāmoko I ara mai te rā, I tō mai te rā. When I sat up on the table and was told a story about it. It, of course, is in a holistic sense, the story, all of these journeys that I've been on are continuous. We're all on what I call a learning continuum. If it was about understanding tāmoko, and for all of those who are listening to this Zoom this week, we're all on a learning continuum, even those tamariki, in their journey and in their experiences. And if this Zoom was all about, well, this Zoom is about storytelling and the power of storytelling, I suppose. And let's just say I'm the clever Dickie in the room. I know more than any of you on this screen here about storytelling and the power of storytelling. It's just an example, whānau. Tauira noiho, because you out there are a storyteller. I'm just using this as an example. My role is to, wherever I am on that continuum, always seek to better myself by being a good listener and being a good observer of others, I suppose, who are on these life journeys. So my life journey has been growing up, my journey into tāmoko, my storytelling journey, my work in conservation, been 20 years with the Department of Conservation, working with our taonga species and the like. And so I'm not sure how much time I've got, but I'd just like to revert back to you.
Rua meneti.
Rua meneti. So shall we take questions?
Yeah, kia ora, tio, I wena kōrero. Ki te kore te kaiako e whakapono kai aia ngā pūkenga o te tuku kōrero paki, me pēhe whakapakari ake I aua pūkenga I ngā tamariki. So we've received a question for Joe. If you're not feeling confident as kaiako about being storytellers, how do you grow that potential in children in your tamariki? What can a kaiako do mean, you're a great storyteller, Joe, but, you know, I'm thinking, mena katae au,
Kataia e koutou katoa. Kia mohi mai
Kia ora.
koutou. Kataia e koutou katoa I tēnei o ngā tūāhutanga. I suppose it's about bringing, understanding what story is and the importance of story, because there are connections to the past. And they could be personal stories, they could be the traditional stories, the like. And the important thing is, I mean, say, you may not tell a story like I do, but you have a story to tell. And there are many, many different ways of telling stories. I'm usually all over the place with the tootie story, you know, that sort of thing. But I could tell that story just sitting in front of a screen or in front of an audience, just using facial features and the voice. The power of the voice, the reo, is where it's at. But getting back to your question, I think it's when you see someone like me who's had many, many years of experience, you say, oh, geez, I can't do that. Make a start. It's in you. It's in you to be able to tell stories.
Kia ora. Ngā mihi. Pai. Mena, he pātai atu anō, tā tētahi katae pe koe te whakakā I tō Mike, mena he pātai tāu ki te kore ka whakahoki a te wāhi kia Beth, mana hei whakakapi, mena he pātai tā tētahi, he meeting tēnei, nō reira katae tātou katoa te kōrero, ki te hiehia.
I'm sorry I rambled on a bit.
Kei te pai noi ho.
O tēnā tātou e te whānau, nei rā te mihi manawaru kia koutou. O tira kia koe e te pāpā nei rā,
Kia ora.
mihi kau ana kia koe, kei te pērā tonu, tō āhua te tuku atu I ngā kōrero pūrākau, ngā kōrero ngākau nui e piri ana kia koe. Tautoko mariki ahau I ngā kōrero a hene I haia, kei roto I te katoa, he pito mata, kua hau I te wā I rongo I a koe te e he ki ngā taukua hori, te hui o ngā takawainga I kirikiri roa pēr. I tīmata hau I te tau o aku mokopuna. Ko ngā kōrero e pāna ki ngā whetua tamarereti e rā tū āhuatanga. I tēnei wā tonu ka pērā tonu rātou, nana, kōrero mai anō tērā kōrero o tamarereti. So he nau ke tēnā, tērā kākano, I tīmata hau ki te mea ngāwari, aku mokopuna, kare he whakawā. Engari, he awa no mena ko ngā tauira I roto I te akomanga. Tērā pe ko tērā titi atu huarahi mōku I mua I taku honga mai I te whenua nei. Nā, tēnā koe hoki hene I haia tō umanga I whakariri ana I tēnei tūmomo akoranga. Miharo.
Pai te ki te a koe. Kia ora.